What is a central focal point and why is it important? We will start with what is a central focal point. A central focal point is that area in a painting which attracts a viewer's attention. In other words, it is what the painting is all about. Why central focal point is important and things related to central focal point will be explained later. But let me first tell you that the central focal point is very important because just like in any novel or in any story, there is a main character and the storyline follows that character. In that way, in visual art also, we have to keep a storyline in our paintings as well. Visual art is a still story. It is a story on the canvas, and that is why we have to also follow the rules which we follow for other forms of artworks like writing or in any movie. Most of the painters will paint their paintings and making everything important in their work. Like they will put sharp edges and they will put equal lighting for all the things that are present in the painting, and that will make it a thing painting and not a story painting or a visual art. That is the problem with the beginner artists also. They will put emphasis on everything else in the painting and they will work on everything to death. They will have a lot of details everywhere, but that is not important. What you want to say can be told with a few brush strokes also. Old masters had this formula for golden rule wherein they will put their central focal points onto those locations. What is the golden rule? It is a shape on a canvas which I will show you in a while, and mostly all the natural objects are having a golden mean. In fact, the ocean waves are also following golden mean, and the shell of a snail will be having a golden mean. So I will show you that also in this image. You can see. Now if you have a canvas and you divide it by 1 by 1.618, I think I'm getting the numbers right. So if you have a horizontal side, say 12 inches, then you have to divide it by 1.618, and then you will get, then you will get a line, like whatever distance suppose it is. After that you will draw a line on that, and then now take the rest of the canvas and again whatever measurement has come, then again divide it by 1.618 and you will get another line. Similarly you have to do it for the vertical side also, and you will see that you will get few lines which are intersecting each other. Now what is the importance of these lines is that you can put your central focal point and the mini central focal points on these intersections. I will talk about mini central focal points in a while. Now the question arises, how can you establish a central focal point in your painting? Well, that's an obvious question and I will help you in establishing a central focal point. Whenever you're beginning, even if you are a beginner artist, I would suggest you all to always start with your work with that as a beginner also, because then it will help you a lot in the later years when you're painting like a professional artist. So develop this habit of establishing central focal point in your painting. How can you establish and how can you determine a central focal point? Now central focal point is the area in the painting which is having the lightest light, like the brightest portion of your painting is called the central focal point. That is how you can place it. It is having the darkest dark and the lightest light, so this is why it will attract viewers' attention. The best way to accomplish central focal point is by putting light on something, putting a light on the object which is a lot lighter than the rest of the painting. Now why do I say light? Because as a human being we are attracted to light. When we were cavemen, our life was dependent on light because that time electricity and nothing else was there. So in fact the invention of fire was also not there. What we used to do was we will move in the direction of light, and that's how we survived. That is why that is already inbuilt in us, and when we are seeing light our eyes shine bright and we are attracted towards a lighter portion. Light is very important when you are representing your art to public. There are 7 steps which you have to keep in mind while establishing the central focal point, and the number 1 is that establish the central focal point as soon as possible in your painting. When you have a white canvas and you are covering it up, try to cover the entire canvas in like first 10 minutes of your painting and establish the central focal point first. Determine where you want to place it in your painting. In that way initially you can place the central focal point and all the other objects in your painting. Now when we are starting out, it's like molding a clay, so you can change the positions and the things which you did not like in your painting. So that is the first stage. If you found this information which I'm telling you useful, do not forget to subscribe to my channel and click the like button as well. Now all the things taught by my mentor Stephen Bauman. You can go to his page and check out as well. So establish the lightest light in your painting first, because after that everything else will be drawn according to that portion in your painting. Like anything else should not be overpowering the central focal point. My mentor says that it is very nice if you have a lot of shadows in your painting. Now, as much as the light is important, the shadows are equally important too. Now, when you're putting the shadows in your painting, it is very, very important to put light as well to have the contrast, and that will make the central focal point even more attractive to the eyes. You can put 95% of darkness in the painting and only 1% of light. That is a smidgen of light. 95% of light in the sense that you do not have to darken everything else in your painting. If you see Vermeer's paintings, you will find that he has put everything else in shadow, that is the overcast light, and then he has put a smidgen of light onto the object, like the pearl of the girl. That is why your eyes are attracted to the painting. Now you will know why you are attracted to certain areas of the painting, what you will see first in a painting, and all that is because of the central focal point and an organized way of adjusting everything towards that. Now, when you are drawing the golden rule, you can place the objects in this direction, and they will be pointing out to the central focal point or the focal point or the main area in your painting. So your trees could direct viewer's eye to that area. They can be following the golden rule. In that way, you can make the viewer go round and round to the focal point. That's what we want. There shouldn't be lines that are going out of the painting or directing the viewer's eye outside. It should all come inside, and it should all concentrate on the focal point. Number 3 is high contrast. Well, I have already told about this, but yeah, high contrast in the sense that the lightest light and the darkest dark against each other will attract your eyes. In that way, you can also grab the attention of the viewer. You can do that by placing the light onto the object and background being very dark or something like that. At number 4, we have edges. When I was starting out, I did not know everything, and I would start and making everything important and everything with sharp edges. Now, when you blur the edges, the eye will not go there. The eyes will go only to the sharp areas in the painting. Just like how camera focuses on one thing and your eyes are drawn to that. You would have seen in many photographies. Why do you like it? Because everything else is blurred down in the background and only the main person or the portraiture is seen to you. When you're working with the central focal point, starting with the central focal point and working your way out, putting the darkest dark and the lightest light as well as sharp edges near your CFP focal point, and everything else can fade away as you go further away from the central focal point. The focal point is your story. As a visual artist, you are also a storyteller. Always keep in mind, even when you are a beginner artist, that you have to have a story in your painting, which is the most important thing ever. Number 5 is eyes. When you are a portrait artist and you are drawing a portraiture of a person, just do not make both the eyes important. If you could nail one eye, your portraiture is already complete, so you do not have to worry about anything else. We as humans again are attracted to eyes. We look at people's eye, and that is why it is important to establish the eyes. Whenever you're drawing any portrait, like you're drawing the portrait of an animal or a portrait of a person, horse, dog, cat, anything, everything, whenever we are looking at it as humans, we will be attracted to the eyes. Even when you're painting, if you nail one eye, you are good to go. How do you establish all the things which I have mentioned in a portraiture painting? Now, when you're drawing a portrait, you have established the central focal point as one eye, maybe right eye or left eye, whatever eye you want. The light falling onto this side of the face, and a fill light is filling up this portion of the portraiture. So this light should be very strong compared to this light which is filling up. The light is falling, and hence this eye will be brighter than the light falling onto this eye. So when you're establishing how would you place the faded edges, now this portion will be very, very important. Now the ears on this side can fade away, can have blur edges. The sides or portion of your jaw can have blur edges. I'm just giving a general idea on how can you approach a portraiture painting with the CFP. with a focal point. So this portion you can make it sharper and this portion a little blurrier, and when you're going down or away from the central focal point or the focal point, you can just blur down all these edges also. At number 6, if you are a landscape painter and you love landscape painting them, then again in that case also there should be some sort of light coming into your landscape. It cannot just be all the grasses of the same color and there is no transition, there is no light falling out, because that is not going to work. Because I have been also painting, and the paintings in which I have put light on, they work really well in terms of viewers attention, other than the paintings which I have done with no light and lot of colors. In your landscape, the light or the lightest portion or the focal point could be anything, like it could be the sun, the moon, or the fog or the mist, things like that. Whenever I am painting a landscape, mostly sun will be the central focal point, and also you can put the reflection of sun in water, that could also work as the focal point. Hypothetically speaking, if you're painting a portraiture with a moon, say, then what will you do? And you will ask this question to me, Shraddha, what can we do if we are placing a person and moon or sun together? I have solution for this as well. It is the sub central focal point or the mini central focal point. Now, as I told you, there should be only one focal point in your painting, but you could also have mini central focal point which are not having as strong light as the main focal point, but they are also having some sort of light falling onto them. You can have more than 2 or 3 subfocal points in your painting. Again, the eyes should be directed in such a way that everything goes to the main central focal point. So you can have multiple focal points as well, but be sure of the strongest light and the strongest point what you want to say is put into the painting first and is put in strongly. The 7th point is more than one central focal point. When you're placing a female with the sun, what you can do is you can place the highest light or the lightest light in her eyes, and then you can make the moon or the sun the secondary focal point in terms of light, or dulling down the light or the brightness of that area a little bit, just a little bit, very little. And that is why you have to work with your values as well. As a beginner, we do not see a lot of values. As a professional artist, we start to work with values in terms of 1, 2, 3 and 4 values, in terms of lesser variations of values, because in that way it will make the painting less complicated and much more easier and fun to accomplish. You can experiment with your focal points, but always remember to put in a focal point, because that is the most important thing. So the final takeaways are, number 1 is that establish a central focal point as soon as possible initially in your paintings, and they should be put on with the lightest light and the darkest dark, the highest contrast. Do not put the details initially. Number 2 is work your central focal point to the way outside. When you have kept your central focal point and established the position, start working from the focal point outwards. Put hard edges and the edges will fade away as you go away from the focal points. Number 3 would be you can put a lot of contrast and lot of color also in your painting. Number 3 is when you're painting a portraiture, paint the eyes first and nail only one eye. Number 4, if you're painting a landscape, then establish the central focal point as your sun, moon, mist or water reflections. Number 5 is have fun experimenting with light and darks in your painting. Your painting journey will be totally different when you're approaching painting like this. If you're painting from pictures on Pinterest, find pictures which are having the light falling onto a person or an object or an area. That will work like a magic in your painting, and you can show it to your friends or family and they will see the difference, and you will know why they are attracted to certain pieces and not attracted to something else. That was all about the central focal point. I hope you liked this video and you found out a value out of this. If you want to learn more about art, you can click on the I section above, and there will be a link to the playlist. You can go and watch that as well. Now, if you want to know what are the solvents that you can use in your painting, then watch this video which is popping up on the screen right now. I will see you there. Bye bye.